Well, thanks for coming to my lecture. I've wanted to do this for a while. I feel like even a year ago, I was kind of messaging some friends or like and being like, "Can I try explaining something to you, like your roommates or whoever?" And I never really did that, but I do talk about this stuff with a lot of people, and there's a lot of brilliant people in the room who will see some things that they've said to me reflected back to them today. And I have this map here as something to follow along with or to take a picture of or something at the end. Okay, so basically, oh yeah, well the title of this thing is it's, what did I call it? how serious is your life? Because there's this book that came out, I think, in the 70s called As Serious as Your Life. And it has a very beautiful cover of this free jazz drummer, Rashid Ali. And the quote, "As serious as your life," is obviously indicating that you're playing this music is as serious as your life. And the full quote, I think, is McCoy Tyner, a pianist, saying, "Music's no plaything, it's as serious as your life." And it just kind of stuck with me as a like piece of art on the cover on its own. And so it stuck with me, and then I think about like saying that to someone nowadays sometimes, and like, I don't know, the response kind of being like, "You see what this means?" or something, and they're like, "Yeah," like, it's like, "Yeah, oh yeah, sure, as serious as your life." It's just kind of, I feel like the gravity of life itself is getting kind of like, we're becoming desensitized to it. And so I kind of wanted to talk about that, and also the general state of like being alive right now in this historical moment. So life itself and life in this historical moment, because I also notice a lot, like, in there's an email thread called, and sometimes I see people in there kind of like, two really stuck with me, where one was like, I don't even know what they were asking for, but they were like, they were referring to like political reality or something, and they were like, they like put in stars, in asterisks, like gestures to the state of the world, or like, you know, like, oh, with everything going on, you know everything going on, but it's always so vague. And I feel like I'm gonna say everyone a lot in here, which is a generalization, and obviously it's not true, but for the sake of talking about our sort of shared culture, especially in this sort of like hipstery artist scene of, it's like, I think that's just how I'm gonna talk about it. So, so I want to dig into kind of how bad things really actually are, instead of kind of being vague about it. But we can end on an optimistic note. There will be some optimism, but I am like gonna kind of just dig into these like observations that over the past few years, and also over the course of my life, but especially over the past few years, like, me and some friends have been trying to put this together. And unfortunately, this is an experimental lecture. Like, I have not really prepared very much in advance at all. Most of you saw me do the preparation for this because I did it like in the past hour, or like I did a little bit like yesterday. But it's mostly like I kind of need to experiment with saying this to new groups of people and exploring talking about it, as opposed to just writing about it. Because as much as I write about it and create my notes, it doesn't really apply. So I'll start with dispossession and powerlessness. And specifically, I'll talk about political power to start with. So political power, like being able to choose what you do with your life, or what life is like, or choose a mode of life for your community or for people. I think we're totally expropriated from political power, and it is a problem, because really the origin of political power is life itself, as is embodied in the human body, because humans are the animals that choose or govern or whatever. But so we're all alive in this room, and where's our political power? And that is a great question that has an answer. So I'm just gonna kind of talk a little bit about, I mean, in a way that's an overarching theme of this whole thing. And it's not even just politics. It's by losing our political power, we're losing our like ability to choose all sorts of things about the basic activities of humanity, of human life, such as like food or sex or like your own health. Like all of this, the power to control all of these things are getting like pulled away. Even shelter, it's like you can't, if you build a house somewhere, or like if you build a shelter, like a shack, like if you're homeless, it will be torn down. It's like you don't have a right to do that anywhere. And even just home building in the past like 80 years in this country it's become entirely inaccessible. It actually used to be like tons of people in Massachusetts were still building their own homes in the 50s. And that's also like a community activity. Like many buildings were built without plans, like no plans at all. I think there was a cathedral that was built without a plan, because you just get you and your team, you're like the people who do things, they all just kind of like, you practice and you can improvise. And this is another overarching theme of this talk is improvisation and creativity and spontaneity, as opposed to control and prediction and risk analysis. Because I feel like we're in a society that, especially after the world wars, has tried to manage everything. It tries to manage risk, it tries to manage global risk through the Cold War, and it increasingly in our own society tries to manage behavior, and it does this in all sorts of ways, through social media or through, because there's like this whole, there's this mimetic communication, or like you see these images and they imprint into you and you communicate in that way, sort of like that character from this show, say, except it's all much more decentralized now than it was in the television era, because we're all the creators and the consumers. So it feels organic, and in a sense it is organic, but its origin was not. It was sort of this planted thing, because these apps have infrastructures that are all designed and that all imprint in our minds the rules of the interface. Like by using Instagram, or by using it a lot, you are giving part of yourself to Instagram, or you're bringing Instagram into yourself in a very real way. You start to think with it, you start to communicate with it, and you are unified with it in a very real way. And something that stuck with me sort of on this note is the idea that these images really are a physical part of us, or like our communication with our phone is an electromagnetic communication. Like we're bonded. Our nervous system is an electromagnetic system, and light is an electromagnetic, who knows? But ultimately you're truly connected with your phone when this happens. Everyone bring to mind the image of Kanye West. Have any of you seen Kanye West in the flesh?
No.
Okay. Well, the image that you just brought to mind, that you just brought out of your neurons into your mind's eye, is literally physically a part of you. And you didn't see it in person. You saw it. Everyone just visualized Kanye West. There's no way you didn't. And it's like, it's just in there. It's just you. And so that's one very like simple example. It's like the Mona Lisa or something, which I've also not seen, but I've probably seen a facsimile of or something. But yeah, so that's a very simple example. It's an image, and that image is a part of us. But there's a whole architecture that gets imported by using these other architectures. So it's not just the image that's in us, it is a whole means of thinking, and it's a whole means of acting. And I think that is it's very insidious, because you don't know that that's going on. And there was no referendum on the smartphone. There was no like, okay, Steve Jobs, that's pretty cool. Hey, everyone in our so-called democracy, should we sell these things? Do you want one of these things? Maybe everyone would have said yes, but there's no choice. And it's such a groundbreaking innovation that it changes everything from that point on, and you are able to just like that was just dictated by the market, essentially. Not to say, I don't know, I'm not trying to be abstract and say the market did it and like people weren't concretely inventing these things and pushing them and advertising for them and creating the psychological hooks in the advertisements to really get them to catch on, or really the dopamine hooks in the infrastructures or the satisfying look of the buttons or this or that. That's all very real. And yeah, so you don't know really what you're signing up for when you buy your first smartphone, and we didn't know what we were signing up for 20 years ago when they started becoming a part of our lives. And this is the case for like lots of technologies such as speed cameras or like I don't know, I just hate
the
this.
nuclear bomb.
The nuclear bomb, yeah, that is a good one. Yeah. Yeah. The point being, so once you have all of these, once you have these tools and you start using these tools and you're subject to the techniques of these tools, you are like you're integrated into this global like capital circulation system where basically everyone in control of the power and the money is literally evil. And there's like, and they don't have your best interest in mind. And you have this sort of, oh, there's like an open app store or this or that. All of this stuff, the stuff that rises to the top is the stuff that is extremely manipulative and desensitizes you to reality. So that's kind of where I'll move from here. Is our general like state of awareness is there's like this deep fog about everything that's going on, and like historically in the recent past, or historically in the moment, or even just how things work, like how my car works, or why the roads are laid out the way that they are. Like we're pretty disconnected from our entire environment. There's also an immense overstimulation problem because these devices are very addictive. And when you are kind of foggy about how things came to be, which we all are because we're raised in a system that does not really explain these things to us, educationally or whatever, there's a lot taken for granted. Or like it's, I don't know, I think of the kid who thinks the apple comes from the grocery store instead of from the tree. And so this creates a sort of shallowness of mind that is very like, I don't know, just very influenceable. And influenceable is the name of like a perception management company right now that like does influence like campaigns for people. It's like, so it's literally like explicitly the case that we're all being tremendously manipulated. And oh yeah, and also our parents were subject to this and our grandparents were subject to this. I really don't think this is always been the case. I mean, we've always been making technological innovations, and the Industrial Revolution was a long time ago, but these like things really are quite novel right now. And just in the generation since our great grandparents, there's been such an evolution of like disconnection from reality. I remember like when I was a kid, my family's from and would talk about he was growing up in the 60s, he was born in the 50s. He would talk about all the factories and all these like machine shops and how much stuff they would make, and like was here, and there was just so much like manufacturing, and he also just knew where all of it was. I guess he was a firefighter and he kind of like knew navigation, like pre-GPS firefighter, you have to know where you're going, but so he knows what everything is. But even so, there's not much of that around anymore. I remember being a confused kid because you see the plastic toys or whatever and you're like, I have no idea where this came from. And like that applies to basically everything, even our food in most cases, unless you are lucky and connected with your farmers. It's like, I don't know, when I shop at Trader Joe's, I have no idea where any of that stuff comes from, unless I'm like looking at the label that says where it's from. And then that's very abstract because I don't know how many hands it passed through before it got to me, like literal hands.
Yeah.
And okay, so that's, I sort of alluded to this kind of like response that you get sometimes of like things have always been changing, or people have always kind of complained about new generations or something. And I'll take that as an opportunity to talk about our culture of denial and recuperation. So recuperation, what I mean by that is like, say you try to dissent, say you try to be a radical, whatever that means to people, like if you're being recuperated, you are actually working for the system that you are claiming to oppose. And I think this is a huge problem right now. I think there's like, we're in a culture of like irony and detachment and total ignorance and like a reactionary progressivism. And I think, and the reason I connect to these two things is like, people love to kind of like if I were giving this talk one-on-one with someone on the street, which is kind of what I do, you might get something like, well, people have always complained about the youth. And then they just kind of are like, consider this, that's all they say. That's it. And a friend of mine recently was saying, or he was talking about Wilhelm Reich and Hegel and how they had this explicit philosophy of like, I'm going to try to figure out everything as much as possible. Like, I just kind of am going to do that, and I'm going to see where I get. Or like Reich interviewed near the end of his life, like, is saying like, that's how I got from here to here. I just tried to figure everything out. And this is the total opposite of what most people do. Say you sort of like are trying to make a point or point out any sort of severity about anything, you maybe get a sort of ironic or detached, or at least even if it's sincere, it's just not thought out. Like and then they just kind of ping pong it back to you as like, consider this. And it's not looking good for communities where that is the way that you interrogate ideas.
Be realistic.
Huh? Oh yeah, be realistic is another one. It's like, or like, I don't know, just being just trying to write things off. And I do have like a lot of sympathy for people in our situation, but another thing would be like, well, what can you really do? And then that's the end of the conversation. And I don't know. It's kind of like in one book I was reading, a recent book, they were describing it as just being so cool, and it's like it does feel like that, and they do make you feel like a crazy person for thinking. Even just, I mean, I'm kind of thinking particularly about the sort of artsy hipster people, but it really applies to everyone. It applies to this like 70-year-old guy I was talking to the other day too. So, but anyway, when you're like that. And also, this plugs into all the phone stuff because everyone's on their phone. It's there's an immense like, you're prone to accept narratives, and there's a big business in getting narratives accepted in the world. And for example, I mean like Gideon's Chariot, Operation Gideon's Chariot in Israel started in the past few days, which is kind of like they're restarting their land war in Gaza, which will be like a full-on extermination essentially. And so I mean like just think of at that level, like a nation state, a very serious and like violent and Jewish supremacist and like extreme and genocidal nation state. Imagine the infrastructure, the like social technology that you must have developed to be committing a genocide in broad daylight and literally have no one care, and everyone just like is still going to work in the country that's paying for it. And the country that's paying for it doesn't even really have strategic objectives that are satisfied by this. Because there's like, another point you could make is like, oh, well, this is really America doing this. And it's like, that is definitely not open and closed. This is like the Iraq War again. It's like, in the past 20 years, what strategic objectives have been better for the United States out of invading Afghanistan? There were a lot of objectives accomplished for Israel, but that's kind of what I'm saying. There's like, you can have a serious wealthy nation state and you create this social technology and literal physical technology. They're the startup nation. They're like, that's their thing, is like being a tech nation and exporting like blackmail software. But anyway, not to get too in the weeds on that, but there's a narrative acceptance. So that's just one example of like, there is so much like thought put into all of this power, and we are very disconnected from it. I mean, the think tanks publish a lot of stuff publicly because they're kind of pushing things to politicians or to like corporations want to sell their products to other nations or organizations or intelligence organizations. So you actually can find like astonishing stuff publicly. And yeah, that's without really going into the details of how it works. But we're on the tail end, or we're under the boot of that narrative acceptance. And well, maybe some of us are under the boot and some of us are fine with the boot. Because it's like, if you're not too like, if you aren't able to like think these things through, then it's all kind of the same. And I guess from here, like, I'll bring it to, I mean, this wasn't where I was gonna go, but this might be a fun one. So this, I'll talk a little bit about, so I guess I'll dig down deeper into like, what are we like, these people who are being subject to like these control techniques, essentially, because to tie it back to that overarching theme that I've been describing, it's like, this is about just controlling what people do with their lives. It's like, you go to work, you're like the material force that accumulates capital in the owners of the companies. I wouldn't have like a big problem even with like the typical American plaza that we can all imagine if those companies weren't all like just huge corporations and those were their like 1000th iteration of like a Petco or like a like barbecue place or McDonald's or whatever. Like if those were shops, but they were actually just like unique businesses. I'm not saying I'd be fine with that, but it would be a lot better. And so all of these like gears that we're turning, or cranks that we're turning, are, or like say people in service jobs, and all of this is just like accumulating capital for an elite class that we're really shockingly disconnected from. And one interesting, I mean, I wasn't gonna bring this up, but I kind of just want to like say why I was mad at Luigi Mangione, who shot the CEO recently, allegedly. Yeah, allegedly did that. Like, whatever, no comment on that event. However, like, they said he wrote a manifesto. It was not a manifesto. I don't think he would even claim that it was. It was like notes on a napkin about something. And it's like, at least point to any document that anyone can read about any of this stuff, because there's, not to get too optimistic right now, but there's so much that's been written about this for like the entire history of humanity that you can use to like prop yourself up, prop your friends up, and regain your political power. Like, there's so much knowledge out there that you can find and use to understand your world and yourself and how power works. So I was kind of pissed off that it was like, because there was so much press about his so-called manifesto, and like, it's like, if that had been anything, if that had been like read one specific book, so many people would have read that book, and that sucks. But anyway, so from our yeah. So from talking about the kind of like our place in the power structure as kind of like these dejected consumer watcher people, comes the idea of abstract identity, which is, I think, people in our sort of like desensitization to the world and to ourselves, and just literally desensitization, our senses, like the things that give us the ability to be aware of the outside and the inside. Like, there is such a, like, it's been degraded extremely, our capacity for feeling, by being in such a stressful hell world, essentially, where we're kind of forced to work. And anyway, so I think a major way that people cope with this is through abstract identity. And by that, I mean, like, you have an identity. Everyone in this room has an identity. Like, we're literally indiscernible. There's no circumstance where you could completely confuse someone for someone else. Like, you're at least in two different, you're never in the same space. You're in, like, you're next to each other, you know? It's people have identity, concretely, mentally, spiritually, soul, whatever. There is, like, an identity. So I'm not railing against that. But I do think that is what I would call concrete. It's, like, real, it's material. Even if it's immaterial, it is real and concrete. But you contrast this with what I would call, like, a projected identity, or, like, so you're watching a show and you're like, oh, that's so me, or you like, even you're reading a book and you're like, oh, I want to be like this guy, or it's like, you know, there's social categories that you sort of, like, see that person putting on and you're like, oh, I want to be like that. This is the most normal thing in the world. I'm not, like, saying this is, like, inherently bad or something you need to stop at all costs, because we all do it. And it's like a survival mechanism. It really makes sense, even just evolutionarily, that we would have to do this. You have to kind of categorize or generalize or be abstract about groups of people, or about anything, not even groups, just groups of people. But anyway, so you create these social categories, and it becomes, like, it's sort of very satisfying to do this. And we also have been, for, like, I don't know, about 100 years, like, in a very different mediascape compared to the entire history of the human species. And I think that this sort of thing we've developed, this human nature of just sort of generalizing or abstracting at times, or creating categories, is now in our present mediascape, like, being tremendously exploited. And it is, like, this, along with the phone, and they totally interact with each other. It's incredible how much people will put up with, because we're in such an intolerable situation, but because we are, like, able to have these satisfactions through phone use, or through, like, entertainment, or even just, like, through our social interactions with each other, but they're mediated by these sort of abstract identity concepts, which I still didn't really define, so sorry about that. But it's just you put up with, like, being in hell, like, for that. And it reminds me of, like, when the pandemic happened and we all got paid, like, a lot of money if you could prove or say you were unemployed. And it's like, that's a pretty easy way to make people, like, not complain. It's like, that was the most money I've ever made in my life. And I was like, all right, this is awesome. And but had that not happened, I think things would have gone really differently in the country. So strategic thought involved in the psychological influence there. But yeah. I guess it just kind of, well, here's how they interact. The identity stuff and the screen dependence stuff, because there's, like, this in let's say it's the 70s and you're a punk or whatever. You go to the punk clothes store in your neighborhood, and you get your stuff, you know? You get your studded belt. There was at one point a very obvious commodification of identity, where you could identify and you could buy it, and then you could be it and you could represent it, and then other people could buy it. Like, there was that circulation of social categories for people. And now it's so weird, I don't even really know how to talk about it. But with the, like, phones or Reels or TikTok, or just, like, people being creators and consumers, also really changes the dynamic, because before it was all top down. It was like there was the Sex Pistols, or there was like a TV show. It was like they were coming to you, but now it's very easy to create and share with everyone. So it sort of accelerates this whole process of perhaps homogenization. But it's a like sneaky homogenization, because everyone has a For You page. It's like there's a homogenized way of being where everyone is becoming increasingly similar, but feeling as though they are getting things that are like increasingly unique to their own interests. And maybe there I'll transition into the idea of our own interests, our own taste, our own will, because, and I guess I'll start with saying that democracy is not real. It was real. I feel like I like the American Revolution, and I thought it was a great experiment in free government, and I respect George Washington, but there's like, but it's from almost immediately, actually, in George Washington's farewell address. Any of you were here when I read it. There was there's a point where he's basically warning about psychological warfare, and he's warning against like these influence techniques being used to sort of take the reins clandestinely of the free government and eventually destroy the engines that raise them to more immense power. And that's kind of where we're at lately, or for a while, and in new ways presently. But the reason I say that democracy is not real is because it depends on this Thomas Jeffersonian principle that people are kind of like, you know, they're gonna, I mean, it's almost an assumption that people are good, but fundamentally it's an assumption that people are themselves, or that what people want is what they want. And we learned at the end of the 19th century, and with the science of psychoanalysis and the science of propaganda, and it's like Edward Bernays and advertising techniques, that actually there's a lot going on under the hood psychologically in people, and we're not really just this will that makes decisions and knows what we want and knows what we like and what we want to do. There's a lot going on. In fact, there's contradictory things going on a lot of the time. There's like a death drive where you do things that are bad for you, and I think that plays into the phone addiction a lot as well. It's like, how many of us have spent time on the phone, and then like, or like, say you're on your phone for 3 hours and then you put it down and you're like, I should kill myself. And it's like, it's, but you were putting yourself on the phone. That is literally the death drive of your unconscious, being like, fuck you. It's like, make your life worse. There's a lot of that. I mean, I'm not doing it justice at all, but I'm not going to do any of this justice. It really is like, there's so much to talk about, and I'm not going to take up too much time, because you could just go and go. Anyway, oh yeah, so democracy, oh yeah, so our will is not really our own. So there, yeah, this kind of plays into like all of this, this whole like media sphere. I guess I don't even really know what to call it, but the media sphere of like TikTok, Instagram, social media, but really even just like billboards, ads, all the conventional like means of seeing images, and the new ones like live streaming. Like, it all plays into these techniques of like, not even techniques. There are techniques that are playing into like our soul, essentially, because there's like tricky architecture to the human spirit and the human mind, and it is controllable and it is influenceable, and you can create an immense conformity. I've only lectured once before, and it was in December, and it was about propaganda, and kind of the import of that talk was that propaganda is not when like you see the poster and it's like, oh yeah, we should go fight the Germans. It's more this overarching like entire mediascape and social scape of creating conformist tendencies, like creating modes of life that you are going to conform to. And by creating that and homogenizing it for people, it also eliminates all other alternatives for modes of life. And we see that in a, it's really easy to ramble, so I'm sorry, but it, it just makes me think of the general, global mass extinction event of culture that has been going on for 100 years at least. I mean, really colonialism was something like that, but it's just really accelerating. And there's two things happening. I mean, you literally just kill the people. You have the Vietnam War, or you destabilize democratic regimes in South America and install fascist dictators and create torture schools like the School of the Americas, which you should look up if you're writing any of this down. But there's war, and that was in a way a lot of Cold War stuff, so-called Cold War. But there's war, but there's also this creation of the sort of phone relationship to the mind, and then you export that all over the world. So you can go to Argentina and visit your family and be your distant family. This is something that happened to a friend of mine. And they'll ask you about all these American celebrities that you have never heard of, because they're kind of internet celebrities, and you're like, what? How do you know who this is? Or Mr. Beast or something. It's just, it's a real example. It's a horrifying example. And so there's this literally killing people who disobey, and then there's also exporting your own sort of homogenous, brain dead culture. Shit, I never drink out of this thing, but now I know what not to do. Okay. Well, okay, sure. I'll connect that to repression in the Western countries. I'm not even really going to talk about Europe, because I don't know that much about Operation Gladio or the funding of right-wing militias to destabilize would-be kind of democratic governments there, or movements, or socialist movements. But just more in America, things have not always been this bad. Actually, in a way, I'll connect it just to kind of the 60s, or say the Black Panthers, or real dissident movements, or Vietnam War protests, wherein students were shot. All kinds of actual dissident movements that used to exist. We are in such a if you were doing stuff like that right now, you would have to be the most paranoid person on the planet, because it's become impossible to even do it through just techniques of control and surveillance. I mean, if it's not Edward Snowden said, I feel a decade ago, that all our phone calls were being processed by the NSA. And I mean, Facebook has a history you can look into with the Total Information Awareness Program. There's so much intelligence, national security collaboration with these tech companies. Palantir is kind of one of the most egregious examples right now with Peter Thiel. So we are being watched and recorded all the time. Yeah. And also the new AI tools are so good at organizing massive amounts of information that they actually present a whole new problem, because at first they had all the data, but could they really process it? And now you can kind of there's new techniques of processing that make it way worse that everything has been archived. And this plays into even predictive policing, which Palantir and Thiel have been looking into, and is actually, it seems I don't know, a sci-fi anime thing, but it is actually being pursued technologically, ways of predicting where crimes may happen and who may commit them. Yeah, and the way that kind of all of this works with the surveillance and influence infrastructure, and control infrastructure, is...
As a quick point to that, there's an aspect of we didn't vote for this. Shouldn't we have talked about this? That comes in when you hear, my local police force now has like
tank.
LRAD drones.
Yeah.
That they're gonna shoot at me and give me a Havana syndrome or whatever. You know, it's like,
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, it's astonishing, like how
that people
how
make it and then it's there.
TikToks are.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no choice.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no consent, but the way that a lot of this surveillance and influence stuff works specifically, or control specifically works, is you kind of like, it's like you say you want to control a system. This just connects to like cybernetics, which was this like in the 30s and 40s, like as the foundations of math and science were really like going through a massive crisis, actually. Like it was this attempt to create a managerial mathematics, like a managerial science, a science of being able to like take feedback from your environment and act, like being able to like see a plane in the sky and know where to aim the artillery gun. And to do that effectively, you basically need sensors everywhere. And we have sensors everywhere now through our phones. Like I don't even know how to put that, like in a way that is more, it's just astonishing that you kind of have these techniques that are invented after the world wars of like trying to have control, and you're able to get it to the point where we like literally all probably have a phone on us, and that phone is like collecting data about us, and we're giving data to it, we're receiving data from it that influences our own behavior, and it's just brutal. So, and I'm not even really talking much about like one whole other element of this, which is like just psychological distress and like the actual like psychological reality for people, because everyone has like, I mean, I think literally like in a sense, I don't know, I go back and forth on this, but it seems like literally everyone has in some sense a traumatic childhood, in that like maybe there's an inherent trauma to being born and having a family and like going through the like, oh, your first social interactions are with these two parents, and then that imprints your symbolic reality for thinking about social reactions in all future environments. Like we're literally in a literal like physiological way, we're all in the room with our parents right now, and I mean that like very genuinely. Like there's a symbolic alinguistic like processing that happens in you, that like you're around someone and it's like, oh yeah, this was built, like the cornerstone of this was when I met my mom or like when I met my dad, or like any other events along the way, not to mention. So I don't know how much I'll even really get into that, but it is stressful, and it is very painful. And I think that most, like the reason we do these things, the reason we have our sort of like prosthetic identities and like are so detached is like because of psychological stress. And okay, well now I'll connect it to like and stress is like an energy deficiency, and we are in like one of the worst like food environments in the world. It's in a way one of the best and one of the worst, but it's like astonishing what even exists in the grocery store. Talk about no consent for like what's allowed to be sold. Like and like psychological tricks, like colorful cereal boxes, and it's like there's such a huge like profit margin at the top of all these things that is like going to evil people. Like whoever's running Kellogg, probably evil, and like certainly complicit in a lot of evil, and like because the psychological thing goes so deep. Like you have these colorful boxes that intrigues a child to want to get the box, and like maybe the parents are divorcing or something, and it's like, oh, I want to be the good parent. I should get my obese kid this like sugary cereal or something. I've like seen this happen. It's very sad, and it's like, it's just brutal. But that's just to connect it to the fact that like our food system is like totally fucked. So we're putting shit in our body, and then we're doing shit all day, and then we can't think, and we're retarded. So this makes you politically impotent, and this like is why we all could have a gun to our head in at any second if we did anything like remotely dissident. Yeah, it's pretty rough. And it kind of just creates this, like, anti-life. It just creates this, like, inverted sense of life, because obviously not everyone is, like, visibly distressed. I do think, I mean, there's lots of town. I see so many people who are just going to the restaurants or going to the theaters or, like, going to the bars, and they're very happy people. But, I mean, and there's obviously, like, a lot. I'll preface this with something real quick, which is that, like, human joy and experience and, like, our stories and our lives are going to be there no matter what. So I may talk sort of disdainfully about some of these lifestyles, but that doesn't mean that they don't have, like, things that they're connected to that I think are beautiful in a human way. That is, like, because we all have a soul and we're all, like, attached to, like, I don't know, there's stuff that would just make anyone cry or turn back into the child that they were born as. There's, like, just, no matter like what kind of games you are playing in your life that I may disapprove of or find complicit in genocide or complicit in just, like, total extinction of humanity, potentially. Like, you're still a kid one time, and that's, it's still in you. So, I don't know. I just don't want to sound like I'm dismissing, like, the fact that people really can believe in things, like, no matter how fucked up their lives are. And but yeah, so living here, I see tons of people going to the restaurants and, like, spending money, which is, like, what you're allowed to do. So tons of people spending money, and then tons of homeless people. And then, like, these are the demographics I see downtown. People spending money, homeless people, police. I feel like that's it. And almost no one really even lives down here. I feel like it's not the most, like, residential downtown area. Anyway, I'll connect this to two things, which is just this gamification of life. When things do become so shallow for us, and there's all this projected, like, sense of meaning or sense of who I am or you are, you get caught up in games and you become attached to the games. And some of the games could be academia, they could be gang life, they could be, I don't know, they could just be, like, having a job and, like, raising a family. But it's all kind of, like, predicated in this game that is hard enough to manage on its own. And like I said, you're human, there's all this stuff playing into it that's difficult and everyone has enough to give their own life meaning without thinking about how politically horrible the world is. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. However, our games are really, really destructive at a global scale. Like, the whole world is being, I don't know, I'm generalizing, but the whole world is being destroyed. There are mass extinction events. I love life, animal life, plant life, fungal life, all kinds of life. It's great. And so much of it is being extinguished constantly and faster, and the power is just being accumulated by people that are going to keep destroying it more and more, faster and faster. And so the fact that we are there's kind of a flip side here where it's like, we're not in Gaza, we're in the United States of America. And so those are, say, the two sides of the coin. All of our games are taking place in the American side, and I feel like the complicity that comes with that is very important to interrogate if you remotely have the capability of doing so. And I also believe, just existentially, that everyone has the ability to interrogate these things. So it's kind of hard to watch the games, even if and I'm not saying games because they're fun. They're not. Like, for a lot of people, the games are not fun. Like, being in a gang is not fun, or being a drug dealer. But there is, like, a whole language and, like, a whole manner of thought and manner of engaging people. There's a whole, like, rule system that you pick up and you start working with when you're in that environment. And same thing if you just are a receptionist at, like, an AutoZone or something. And it's, yeah. Wow. I don't know, I mean, there's just so much to talk about. On the note of being a receptionist at an AutoZone, and maybe listening to the radio all day, or, like, working somewhere where you have the TV on in the background all day. I was doing some car stuff today, and I witnessed these things. And I I was really agitated in the waiting room with the TV. I was like so agitated. It was like they were playing NCIS. It was like just like violent and like weird. And I was like, this is like so fucked up that this guy just has to listen to this all day. But I think he doesn't even hear it. Because he didn't seem interested at all. Sometimes someone else would walk in and be kind of interested. He just seemed to be doing his thing. But I'm like, this is like entering you. This is literally physically like becoming a part of you right now, and me. And it's like, it just made me think about how when you're an employee somewhere, your mind is molded toward being an employee there. Like oh, where can I find a screw like this? Oh, you go down to aisle 33. And it's like you go all the way down, and then it's on the left. Like that is like no one should be able to do that. Like that is such a like perverse, disgusting like thing for a corporation to be doing to human beings. Like to make you literally a slave for Home Depot or whatever. And this is occurring in all sorts of services, all sorts of retail, all over the world. And it's just so. It detaches you from thinking and from feeling. It's like you don't need to think at your job. When you're done, you're tired. There's so much entertainment that is very addictive that also you don't have to think to use. You can just watch it and you won't even really remember what you were watching. And if you don't use it, you lose it. Like you can't think after a while. You just become the Home Depot employee or you just become XYZ. Not to say that you don't have your own narratives and life structure and all of this stuff that gives you meaning, painful meaning as it may be even. But that is just so disgusting to me. Like the import maybe of this whole talk, I don't even really have a thesis statement. I just have a bunch of things to talk about. But like the point is like the world right now is intolerable and everyone is just acting normal. And I'm not like, I don't know. Well, it's tricky. I don't even really know how to talk about it because this is sort of a call to like examine your life. I'm not going to say I'm not like judging modes of life in America because I am. But at the same time, I would hate for anyone to walk away from this and be like, wow, I'm such an asshole or like, why do I do all this stuff? I would hate for anyone to be beating themselves up, but I do want everyone like, in general, in the country to be really like examining like what you do with your life, what you do with your money, what you do with your time, what you do with your communication, and what you do with your brain and your hands. Like just everything. Like there should be a little bit more doing things. Or like I remember telling me about working at City Hall and just like what it does to people. It's like no one should be subject to that. And also we then just all suffer the consequences because then they make it impossible for you to say you inherit some land and it's like, oh, actually this is wetlands, like you really can't build anything here. And it's like I could build a fucking shack and live here and be happy as a clam for the rest of my life. It's like, but now I can't because this person who's been turned into a bureaucratic robot like we'll call the police on me if I do. It's just a total nightmare. So maybe I should go to the optimism part from here. Well, before that. I mean, really it is like this is like a new form of slavery. It's like psychological slavery. And like there's where I mean I don't really know most people's lives in the room, but I know people who are like slaves in a very real way to capital. And it is like and what that means is that capital tells you what to do and who to be. It's like you don't really have the control and it's very hard to reclaim the control. And yeah. So, and I think this kind of connects back to this whole state of mind thing. Historical amnesia along with the cultural extinction. So I talked about cultural extinction kind of all over the world, like we're creating our own way of life. But even in America, there were like very diverse ways of life. Even in the beginning, especially in the beginning. But people used to be permitted to live differently, at least a little bit. And increasingly, it is becoming impossible. I mean, now it's extremely hard to even own property at all. Never mind, like, buy some property and live there with, like, 10 of your friends or something. Like, the 60s, you could do that. They were just doing that. And, like, now there's so many doors being closed very rapidly. And we're also becoming so disoriented that we don't even know if we want to go through any doors. It's like, maybe I just need to sit right here and like go on my phone. Yeah, so, but yeah, it's sad because like in all of this homogenization of life and the inversion of life, wherein we're just sort of moving and receiving these images and we have these abstract ideas, but we don't really know ourselves. We don't really know who we are psychologically. We may not know God. We may not know the earth. We may not really connect with other forms of life or nature. And we certainly, in this country, don't have historical background for like all these rapid changes. Like there's just a total like kind of historical amnesia, and instead it's replaced with like vague generalities or even like explicitly like Hollywood narrativized, like there was a show about John Adams or something recently that someone recommended to me, and I was kind of like, no thanks. I don't know. I don't know. It's, oh man. But yeah. This historical ignorance allows for the control. The less you know about how things work or how things came to be how they are, or like how recently people really came into power who are in power and who really like move things around, it's like that just allows for control. And letting your life be homogenized in this way and adapting to these circuits of influence, electrical, psychological circuits of influence, allows for this control even further. People are kind of like prizing entertainment over experience. Like you kind of like, I mean, this is also very common in like aging boomers who don't really have family structures anymore. Like maybe most of their friends died or like, and their family's not around. Like you watch a lot of TV and it's like, that's tremendously sad, but you find meaning in it, or like it's a surrogate for experience. I didn't even really talk about one of the main terms I wanted to bring up, the which told me, or like referred to podcasts as the pornographication of friendship, where you kind of like and I'm not knocking the medium as a whole, certainly, but I think a lot of these parasocial relationships, there is like a what is pornography? Pornography represents something that is extremely within your body. The drive to have sex is like a sacred and incredible thing, and it is a perversion of that and a manipulation of that to get you to consume images, and they make revenue off of it, and they traffic people and they rape people, and it's just like literally one of the worst things on the planet, worst industries. And so that's like a pornographication of your sex drive. And also the more that you use it, the more corrupt your sexual chi, I guess, becomes. And it's like harder to actually have those fulfilling sexual relationships with people. And anyway, so with podcasts, it's like, oh, maybe I don't have many friends right now, and I want it's that people want and need friendship and companionship. So this is another thing that may be lacking. It's like, oh, maybe I don't have sex, so I'm going to watch porn. Maybe I don't have friends right now, so I'm going to like listen to podcasts, specifically ones where a lot of people are talking to each other or they're laughing. Like that triggers all these like good, like dopamine-y feelings, and it manipulates your mind and your soul. Like it plugs you into this stuff that then becomes hard to break. It's hard to break all of these habits. There's some other forms of that, but I'll try to probably wrap it up soon. Yeah. So yeah, I guess this is kind of where it could get optimistic. Which is like, I basically think you can like reclaim sovereignty politically, externally, and also just sort of like internally, even in the dire circumstances, which are tremendously hostile. And just like so unjust. Like the justice system is so horrifying. Like everything about our society is like so tremendously horrifying and controlling, and it's like disturbing and violent. And I'm not even being specific here. This has been such an abstract talk, but it's like in MK Ultra, they literally like, that's like extra dimensional torture. That's like the most, you can do like that's literally the unthinkable of torture. It's like, those are the people that have power in our society, people who would play around with that. So, I kind of think of like three dimensions, or like the way that I think about this personally. So I'll just explain how I think about this personally. Is like, I kind of think of there as being like three pillars of self-sovereignty, where it's kind of like you have to explore these three avenues and build up your strength in each of them so as to regain your will, make your will your own again, and like not be so susceptible to influence or control or violence. And yeah, and those are like, on the one hand, or on, I don't know, number one is like being in connection with nature, or with being, or with God, or however you'll conceive of these things. And there's a withdrawal that kind of needs to happen to experience that in our society. Like, you can't really be stimulated and plugged in. There's sort of a like, maybe a meditative or prayer based like practice and reflection that can like, and a lot of time too, time spent outside of the circuitry, time spent in nature. That's sort of one thing that I think is important. Another thing that I think is important is knowing your own concrete identity. So like knowing literally physically like what you are, like what your aptitudes are, like what food makes your body not feel good, like in a very deep way there, like knowing your physiological form, but also knowing where you came from, knowing your like how your family influenced your psychology, how all of your experiences wound up influencing your psychology. Like there's such a power to, I mean, it's literally like ancient Greek, know thyself. Like it is so powerful to actually like put your hands on that. Because I was depressed for like a lot of my 20s, like to the point of like, and it was like very, I don't know, like all these three things just play a huge role in that. It's like, oh, well, actually, when I understand like who I was as a child, and I understand what I went through as a child, it just makes like everything starts to make sense. Like it's just like a knowledge is power situation. And it was also amazing to read in books, like to read in even very old books at times, just exactly how I was feeling about all of these things that I thought were incommunicable to other people. So that's important. And then the other one is like cultural historical awareness and analysis and critique. So knowing actually like who built the environment that you live in, that you were born in, and that no one ever really explained to you because no one knows how to explain it. It's like getting your hands on that and knowing like who the hell, like I don't know who exerted the most influence on in the 20th century or anything. And I'm not saying that's like where you should spend all your time, but I'm just pointing out, you know, I live right here. This used to be it's about all I got. But so that's a very niche example. Really, I mean more like global currents, global history, wars, like who actually creates the most like geopolitical strife, or like just all like international relation stuff. Or really, I mean, like it's like just a very like concrete thing I did at one point was just learn all the countries on the globe, because there's just not that many of them. It's like, why, like I'm just on Earth my whole life, like why don't I just know all the countries? So it really like gave me such a better handle on like the whole world. So like I was able to like relate to people I would meet who were from Eritrea or something, and it's like they were shocked that I knew where that was. They're just like little things. and big things. I mean, it makes like your comprehension of really the whole movement of like the past 100 years make more sense. Yeah, and I guess I'll talk about one more thing here. And it's a shame that walked out because I feel like they would like this part. But yeah, well, okay. So in Catholicism, there's like three defenses against, say, the devil or demonic influence. And I'm not Catholic, but this is, I think, very instructive. And these things you can do are fast. You can give alms, or you can pray. And giving alms is like giving money to homeless people, or giving food or shelter to people who need it. And I'm going to reinterpret these a little bit in the context of everything we just talked about. Because fasting, everyone assumes, is just about food or water. And I don't know if anyone has fasted from food or water, but it's actually not that hard to do if you also use the internet. Because the internet is basically more satisfying to a lot of us than food. Or right? I mean, it actually is. Yeah, I've fasted with and without a phone, and it's you could probably just go if you had a phone. I think spiritually, I mean, if we're going to think of this as sort of a good and evil situation, it is like, I think you actually really can protect yourself from the evils of the world and of the flesh and of like the manipulations of your flesh by the psychological techniques by fasting from devices. Like actually leave the phone at home, or like actually turn it off for a few days, or just all of this stuff. Like it's amazing how much it changes how you think. Because like, I don't know, I mean, we're the guinea pig generation. Like these things haven't been around very long, and the consequences are not well understood, but they're not good. And I feel like you can regain a lot of like cognitive ability by rejecting them. And because that, I don't know, connects, I always hear people talk about brain plasticity in a positive way, like, oh yeah, you can learn languages at any age or whatever. But the whole import of like a lot of what we've just been talking about is that brain plasticity also works in the other way, and you can become like totally fucked by psychological techniques and by violence. So all right, and then giving alms. So like giving, like a lot of the time, I think everyone should give money to homeless people. Like basically every time they ask, like $1 or $2. It's just like astonishing to me the way, like I'm gonna cry right now because it's just crazy the stuff I witness out there. Just such dehumanization of other people. It's unbelievable. Like, I don't know. I mean, I talked about the passive complicity in evil that we have, but there's active complicity in evil, or there's just active evil from a lot of people as well. And it's easy to, I don't know, I think it's a pretty surefire way to avoid some of that complicity by like giving $2 to a homeless person when they ask, because you just never know like what that really means to someone. Like people have like cried when I've given them $2, just stuff like that. And I also just I saw, I think I'm really crying because I just saw like police really like berating this homeless man a couple blocks away the other day. It's just insane. But the other version, my reinterpretation of almsgiving in light of all this is also just everyone is I had a really good word for this earlier, but like oh man, I wish I had a better word for it. But like everyone really is sort of like brutalized by the situation and is in like really, a lot of people are just so hurt and lonely. And like, I mean, I can't even say especially old people really, but like so many people. So there's like this, I've been talking about like psychological warfare, and like alms are typically about material, like giving material to people, but I think you have to give like some psychological niceties to people, and it's just, it really goes a long way, because like so many people are literally like slaves and don't understand it at all, and they're experiencing so much like pain all the time, and like violence. I literally think of all of this as psychological violence, and just to like have a real conversation with someone can like, that could be the only interaction they have for weeks. Like there's so many tremendously lonely people, or like physically lonely as well, where it's just like, I hug my friends all the time, and like I love here, so there's like no, like I'm not like a needy person in that regard, but like some people have not hugged someone in years, and it's like that has consequences. So I don't know, it's just brutal out there. So I believe in kind of like I don't have a version of this for prayer. I mean, prayer is really just like trying to lift your heart somewhere else instead of letting it get dragged around where they're gonna drag it. So yeah, I don't know, that, and really just charity and forgiveness of people I also really believe in. But yeah, I feel like I didn't hit everything I wanted to talk about, but it's pretty solid. And I guess I would just close on like, I think the stakes for this stuff are extremely high, and I think psychological warfare is often thought about as like not being as real warfare. I've talked to a few people recently about the idea that you I don't know, I mean, imagine being in a blown out building in combat, and like your friend's leg is blown off in front of you, there's bullets everywhere, you're like trying to survive very concretely in that moment. It's like extremely like physically traumatic. I think the intensity of our feelings is like, in a spiritual and psychological way, like an analog of that. Like I think there's like tremendous horror. We're also plugged into the so-called global village. Like we see I try to avoid actual videos of like what goes on in Gaza right now, but like this situation is way worse than Nazi Germany. Like way worse. Even if anyone pushes back on that remotely at all, I would just say the technology is so completely different, and we're all completely aware of what's going on, and the surveillance techniques that they use over there and the cruelty that they use over there is insane. And yeah, so I think the stakes are high, and people really have to kind of like, we've had the smartphones for 20 years. Not to make it all about phones, because it's not, but like people really have to look in their heart and stop buying into all this shit. So thanks.